bit. Right a bit.
Great, that's really done it now, isn't it?
On 4 Now, in the first of 2-time team specials, Tony reaches for the top.
I'm right at the top of Canterbury Cathedral, and a few hundred feet below me, the most ambitious urban archaeological project the country's ever known has just begun. 1/8 of the entire ancient city is going to be excavated to make way for a huge new shopping centre. The Big Dig, as it's known locally, is right down there in the centre of town, so it should be jam-packed full of exciting archaeology from the present day, back to the Romans, and maybe even beyond. The archaeologists are up against the clock, though. The developers want them off-site as quickly as possible. The time team are going to be following the progress of the Big Dig, both on site and behind the scenes, and we're going to be helping the local team to reconstruct the 2,000-year story of this historic piece of Canterbury real estate. Oh, and we've got just 9 months to do it. So why is Canterbury so special for us?
Well, really, because over the last 2,000 years, it's always been an important place, one of the most important cities in the country. It was a prehistoric centre, of course, but it was a very big Roman city. And then it continued to be important after the Roman period because, of course, Augustine comes here, reintroduces Christianity, and it carries on through the Saxon period. And, of course, in the Norman period, you know, with the bishop and the royal castle, you know, it's a major centre all through the Middle Ages as well. For all that period, it was the big main commercial market centre. It's still a market centre now. It's still got loads of shops.
But where our dig is over there, that would have been at the hub of where commercial activity took place.
Yeah, I mean, it's in the main street. It's 2 minutes from the cathedral. You know, it's right in the centre of activities.
The area under development is known as Whitefriars. It comprises 6 separate sites, which will be excavated over a period of 4 years. We're going to be following Phase 1, an area about the size of a football pitch right on the High Street. For the next 9 months, it'll be home to a team from Canterbury Archaeological Trust, who've got the task of excavating and recording 2,000 years of stratified archaeology. All the modern stuff, basements and concrete foundations, is stripped off by machine. And when the archaeologists move in, it looks like this. It's been so badly cut by modern development, the archaeology exists only as a series of islands in a sea of dereliction. It's a mass of confusion that would strike fear into the hearts of most archaeologists, but not site co-director Alison Hicks.
I love urban archaeology. It's just, it's never knowing what's underneath. Yeah, look at these buildings and you think, oh no, I don't know what's going on here. I don't know what this trench is. I can't work it out. And then all of a sudden, you'll either find something or you'll have a brilliant idea and it'll be, I know what's happening. I understand how all this works.
Alison and her team are hoping to track the history of the site back from its commercial and religious heyday in the Middle Ages, through the Saxon and Norman origins of the modern city, to the political turmoil of the Roman and Saxon invasions. It's a tall order, but at least the first target's plain enough. This solid length of masonry belongs to the institution that first gave the area its name. It's part of the Whitefriars Friary Church, built in 1324, and its discovery has brought Mick to the site for the first of several visits. Is this what you'd expect the remains of a friary to look like?
Well, I think so around here, because you see it's made of flint nodules which have been knapped to give them a flat front.
These ones here?
Yeah, there and down there, look. So that's the local building material, quite cheap building material. And this white stuff is the local chalk cut into blocks. It's called clunch. So that's a really cheap building material. But then every so often, you see, they've got a block of freestone for the corners. There's one there. This is almost certainly reused Roman material because, of course, the whole city's full of, you know, Roman bricks and tiles, and even in the present churches you can see. But this is Roman stuff reused. There's bits of it everywhere.
Was there a standard way where they built these friaries, or are they all different?
There's a more or less a standard plan, which is a fairly big nave, which is where the local people come in and they have service and so on. That would have been down that end down there. And then there's a passage across the middle called the walking place, and then the chancel is where the friars have their services. And
so where are we now?
Well, that would actually be in here, because this is the north east corner. So this is the friars bit in here,
yeah.
And the population, the rest of them, is down that end.
Which means the interior of the church probably stretches away off the site into an area that won't be excavated for another 3 years. But the rest of the friary complex, cloisters, ancillary buildings and cemetery, would have covered a large area all around the church, and some of it must be under our sight. But what? And how was it laid out? The project's the brainchild of Paul Bennett, the director of the Canterbury Archaeological Trust. He's a man of grand ideas and grander expectation. He's convinced the dig will rewrite the city's history.
These are the biggest windows we've ever opened up on the archaeological sequence. For 25 years I've been working in this city, and this is the best possible opportunity we could ever have to disseminate the history of the city, to understand the history of the city. It's been a very long, hard trail to bring us where we are today, looking across at this fantastic undertaking.
Which has suffered a small setback. Before they got into the meat of the friary, the archaeologists were expecting to spend a week or so excavating post-medieval rubbish pits. But the more they dug, the more they found. And 4 weeks into the excavation, they're still at it. They're getting through the pits as quickly as they can, but it's a painful process. So what's the problem with the rubbish pits?
Well, the problem, Tony, is that they are incredibly rich. And it's a very big problem and a bit of a heartbreak to whack them out the way that we are whacking them out, because they're full of wonderful cultural material.
What is this place?
Well, this is our fines processing facility.
To underline the scale of the problem, Paul showed me just one day's haul of finds.
Over here, for example, well, this is a chamber pot, post-medieval chamber pot, still with poo in it.
Oh, very pleasant.
So, you know, context from all over the place and of all dates. Industrial slag over here.
That's this stuff.
That's that stuff over there. Bits of the church. These
Down
are
here.
cornerstone.
What's this?
Ah, that's a horn core. And it's quite interesting, actually, because when you get pits full of these things, they're probably making early window glass.
Really? I can't wait to see how. But in the meantime, I'm beginning to understand why Paul gets so excited about this stuff. It's full of information. This butchered bone, for instance, tells us badger was on the 17th century menus, along with more conventional fare, and evidently lots of it.
The majority of the material is post-medieval, and with a small amount of medieval, and they show the improvements made to the livestock during the agricultural revolution. Here you've got medieval cattle, metatarsal, and a post-medieval one, and the size increase is due to improvements made, so they will carry more meat.
Excavating all this wonderful stuff has put the dig several weeks behind schedule. But by the end of November, the archaeologists are finally ready to start on the medieval. Mick, what would Canterbury have looked like in the Middle Ages?
Well, not a lot different to what it looks today in the middle, in the sense you've got the cathedral, all the buildings around that, and of course many of the buildings are medieval anyway, and they're all aligned on the streets and on the properties which go back to the Middle Ages, and the whole lot enclosed by a town wall which is still there. So there's the main gate, the west gate, and you see the wall comes round, and then around there, look, you see picking up there, you see all the towers round there, and it comes back round, more or less where the ring road is on the far side, look. And I mean, there's other important stuff outside as well, because the main other open green area over there, that's St Augustine's Abbey, which is founded by Augustine himself. And that would have been an equally huge church and buildings like the cathedral just outside.
What did they do on those big green spaces in the Middle Ages?
Bury people in some cases.
I see. And you've got a bone there coming out.
Yeah, there's a great cut in there. You see it coming
an arm bone.
Yeah. And then Zoe's got one. You just see skull coming up on the far side.
So far, the archaeologists have uncovered 20 bodies on our site of very mixed age and gender.
I think it's probably a juvenile, 7 to 10 years of age.
See how this frontal bone rises straight up, and there's no brow ridges there. So that looks like an adult female.
This is a lay cemetery, isn't it, Mick? What does that mean?
That means that they're not members of the community of the friars. They are people from the city around. And of course it was a desirable thing to do, to be buried next to a friary, next to the friary church, in the precincts. It was a sort of...
a religious place to go.
Closer to God, you know.
This is the first clue to the layout of the friary. If the lay cemetery is this side of the church, then the cloisters are likely to be on the other side. And the archaeologists should find them on one of the later digs. But something's not quite right. There should be bodies all over the site. Instead, they seem to be squeezed into a small strip right at the very edge.
Because we knew the extent of the church,
Yeah.
and we thought, you know, church, lay cemetery right to the north of it. In fact, we've just clipped the very edge of the cemetery. Most of it must be off under that way.
And none actually around the east end of the church,
No,
which is very
no,
strange.
none at
I mean,
all.
That's a nice place to be buried, you see, around the sort of east end of the chancel.
While the team seek an explanation for the missing burials, I want to know more about the architects of the mystery. Mick, the medieval friars on our side, who were they?
They were the Austin friars who were formed up in the 13th century, and they followed the rule of St Augustine.
And there's all sorts of different friars, the Black Friars and the Grey Friars.
There are, yes, they're all formed in the 13th century, but our particular group was formed by this chap called Annibaldi, who got together a group of hermits and formed them into a group of friars.
What did he want them to do?
He wanted them to look after the spiritual needs of the local population. The friars, by and large, were very poverty-stricken and tried to emulate Christ, tried to act like Christ. They didn't own property, didn't own estates. They went round begging for their food and money and so on. But they were all priests, so they could look after the spiritual welfare of the people that were in the towns.
But finding out what the friars were up to around the church is proving problematic, and not because of the archaeology.
Trouble with the rain. It's been horrendous. I think we've had the wettest autumn in living memory or something. So it's not so much the digging. In fact, people can work in the rain and they can actually, you know, dig the pits out and everything. But you can't get the spoil out. You can't get it up the barrow runs. You can't move the barrow runs across any of the muddy patches. And it just gets too dangerous, really, to do much. So it's fairly horrible.
And it gets worse. The rain turns to snow, and the ground freezes. Good God, it's like metal.
And that's the problem you have. What did I say?
You don't ever feel sorry for them and say, have half a day off?
Good grief, no.
By mid-January, the archaeologists are nearly a month behind schedule. But between storms, they've uncovered an intriguing new twist to the mystery of the missing burials. Where the bodies should have been, they've found buildings. But what are they? and why are they here? Join us after the break. Paul Bennett is a worrier. Right now, his worry is money. He's agreed a price for the archaeology with the developer, Land Securities. But he thinks it's not enough. Give me a ballpark figure. How much, because I've just no idea at all, would it cost to do this archaeology plus on the other 4 sites?
3.5 million at the present. It's very cheap, 3.5 million. Originally I wanted far more, but we've agreed on 3.5 and we've got to stick to that.
3.5 million sounds a lot, but spread over 4 years, it works out at around £17,500 a week to pay for 40 diggers, a team of pottery and finds experts, plant and on-site accommodation. It's actually peanuts, and it means that as well as racing the clock, the archaeologists have got to beat the budget. But Paul thinks big and has come up with an ambitious plan. So what's your strategy for raising more money?
Well, our strategy is to get people to come and see the excavation. I hope we won't have any trouble doing it.
But they'd have a bit of a problem climbing over all this, wouldn't they?
They certainly would, but then they wouldn't be climbing over all this. They'd be coming through the site entrance over there from the high street.
Where, according to Paul's plan, they'll find a giant porter cabin with a museum, a shop, and beyond it, a huge scaffolding walkway from which to view the archaeological action.
We'll be making a charge of £2 a head and £1 for children.
Paul, are you sure this isn't a dream? I mean, we're in nearly the end of January and none of this has happened yet.
Oh, but Tony, I've been planning this for a very long time, and this is a culmination of an awful lot of work.
As an extra money spinner, Paul's divided the site into thousands of 10-centimetre squares, which he hopes the public will sponsor.
If in your square we find something really significant, it gets posted on the website with your name. It goes into our exhibition, so for a period of time it would be on display. You would be sent a postcard saying, your square has recovered this, and you can come and see it. And for your sponsorship, you will also get a season ticket to Big Dig 1.
So what sort of money to sponsor a square?
£5 would sponsor you a square, and £500 would sponsor you a metre square.
Well, look, I'll sponsor a 100mm square for a £5.
Brilliant.
Provided my producer sponsors a metre square for 500.
Excellent, excellent, well done.
The Big Dig, as it's called, is a big idea. No one's ever tried to turn archaeology into a spectator sport before, certainly not on this scale. But before it makes any money, Big Dig is going to cost. Paul and his management committee have taken personal responsibility for a £150,000 loan, which must be earned back. The stakes are high. But so is their confidence in the plan.
Do we have any dissenting voices? We'll just have a show of hands then, I think. That's okay. Go for it.
Yeah.
No, it's got to be something on your face. That's...
The Big Dig is underway.
Right up the end of the high street.
Here's the pinch point behind you. Here's the sea cant pile wall. Okay, here. This is the...
But already, the planning looks to have been less thorough than Paul thought.
We've got enough room for the porta cabins, but we don't have the room for the pavement on the other side at the moment.
There's a 5-metre gap, and there's possibly a little bit more space on the other side of that hoarding.
We need more than 5 metres.
Well, if you need more than 5 metres, that's easily determined by putting out a scaffold over the top of the sea camp pile wall.
Right.
But the problem is then we also come into conflict with the excavation.
Which is exactly what happens. Some of the footings for the porter cabin and scaffolding walkway have to be dug into the archaeology, which isn't ideal, especially as no one's told Alison.
And any nice archaeology then?
Actually, Alison was a bit upset. She thinks we're actually digging through. See those layers there? Yeah. She wasn't too happy about that.
Well, we'll just have to do what we can first thing then. But the only thing is, if they could not start cutting the other trench till an archaeologist is around. There is a certain irony, isn't there, in machine out archaeology so that people can look at the rest of it.
Oops, but the show must go on. And ensuring it does is the responsibility of Big Dig project manager Helen Evans. Her first task is to raise public interest in the project.
Hello, Helen. Good to have you with us.
Hello, Barbara.
What about helping fund the work? Is there a way in which people perhaps can get involved and be part of that?
Absolutely, yes, there is. We've got a wonderful system.
The marketing campaign is a great success. The local papers are soon full of Big Dig stories, and the sponsored squares are selling like hotcakes.
Lovely lady.
But on site, the archaeologists are struggling to untangle a mystery. Just where the Friars Lay cemetery should have been, they've found the stone footings of buildings.
So we've got two sort of structures so far. We've got one in here with a later inserted wall, and we've got another one over that side. And over the far side, we've probably got another one, except a lot of the walls have gone from there. They've been robbed out. But we've got an extension. It does actually run all the way up to there, and we've got a little half that sits in the middle, and we've also got a pit that's full of ash and that, which we've still got to excavate.
So the question now is, how do those stone buildings relate to the friary? Were they already there when the friary was built and the friars just had to build their graveyard elsewhere? Or were they actually part of the friary? In which case, why did they build them in the place where the cemetery should be? Over the next few weeks, they unearth at least 5 separate structures between the church and St George's Street. They all seem to be contemporary with the friary, but they don't look like cloisters, and there's no clue from the archaeology about what they were for.
The thought that I did have was whether this wasn't some sort of speculation by the friary. It's not uncommon with monastic houses that own land that goes right up to a street frontage to see the advantages of developing, a row of commercial properties, shops or whatever, like speculation.
Like the present-day cathedral's just built its big conference centre.
Well, yes, and the big bookshop and all the rest of it.
The gift shop.
Yeah, and then if your precinct boundary went right out to the road, you just pull it back.
Mark and Alison aren't convinced. They found evidence of pre-friary buildings underneath the stone footings. That suggests continuity of occupation, and that none of the buildings were connected with the friary at all. But Mick's got that covered too.
The other possibility is that the friary is just so poverty-stricken that there are buildings coming right up to and around the end of it, rather like you get in some Irish examples, but certainly in France, where you get a cathedral and all the buildings are jammed up against it. Our idea of a church sitting there with free space round it may not have been the norm, and it may be that it was packed round with dwellings, in this part of the town.
There's only one way to resolve the issue, and the team dig on. Big Dig opens to the public in just 1 week. The walkway's under construction, but the porter cabin, which should have been fitted out by now, isn't even on site. Time's running out, and Helen Evans is desperately trying to arrange delivery for tonight.
Okay. Cheers. Bye. They want to deliver the porter cabin at 8 o'clock instead of 9 o'clock, or at least they want me to take delivery at 8, because they're closing the road for other things as well.
The problem is, the other things, laying a new drain, began at 8 o'clock as well.
It's got to stop.
While you're here, an hour after we started, it wasn't just a stop for you. Nothing to do with me. I was just watching the cabin.
They got cabin.
They got come clear.
Alan came across in reverse for it.
The workers won't move. and the easy route to the site remains blocked. The porter cabin, which is 30 metres long and 5 metres wide, will have to go the long way round, through some of medieval Canterbury's narrowest streets.
You can't reverse. The only way is forward. The tightest corner is yet to come. If you thought this was difficult, the other one's even more difficult.
It's got to get through tonight, or there's no way they'll be able to open on time. By midnight, the porter cabin's been firmly wedged for 2 hours and is attracting unwelcome attention.
Yeah. No, if you bounce it and then pull it across.
Yeah, okay.
That's all you need to do. Just give it a little tug this way.
Finally, with millimetres to spare, it squeezes through.
Amazing. Bathed in sweat. Well, perhaps I won't lose my job after all, eh?
Let's dance.
In the days before local councils closed roads, or even had planning departments, if you wanted to build something, you often had to apply direct to the King for planning permission. Time Team have sent local researcher Sheila Sweetingborough to the archives, and she's just unearthed a fascinating document which details just such an application, from our Whitefriars.
Because in 1408, the friars obtained permission from Henry IV to reconstruct their houses and buildings which face the highway, which must presumably be up here.
What date's that?
1408.
Well, that's just right. It's often 15th century, late medieval, when this happens.
And they were able to apply the proceeds to the support of their church and other buildings and to the payment of their dues.
So that does suggest that those were speculative shops and houses by the friary, doesn't it?
It looks like it at the moment, yeah.
Which means the friars were dabbling in the property market. The remains of the pre-friary buildings suggest this was probably a busy part of town when the friars arrived in 1324. The friars probably demolished some of them to make way for the church, but evidently set about acquiring the remaining ones to generate rental income, which is why they put their cemetery in a less sacred position at the west end of the church. Within 90 years, they'd acquired the lot and obtained the permission of the king to rebuild and refurbish, with no doubt an increase in rental value. The friars enjoyed the fruits of their business acumen for 120 years, but then in 1538 it all came to an abrupt end. Henry VIII dissolved the monasteries, including Whitefriars. And Time Team's Robin Bush has uncovered another remarkable document. It records in brutal detail the end of John Stone, head of the friary at the dissolution.
With the dissolution of the monasteries, only about 15 monks out of the 10,000 involved protested and met a gory end. And they obviously had to be made examples of. Friar John Stone, for instance, had said, if I die for it, the king may not be head of the Church of England, but must be a spiritual father appointed by God. Well, Henry VIII wasn't going to stand for that. That counted as treason, so he had to be hanged, drawn and quartered. And you can imagine, you know, thousands of people streaming out from Canterbury down there to watch his gruesome end.
How do we know all this?
we've got the city chamberlain's accounts, which give all the details of what it cost. Paid for half a ton of timber to make a pair of gallows, to hang Friar Stone, for a carpenter for making the same, and the dray, the horse to drag them, a labourer who digged the holes, 4 men who helped set up the gallows and for drink to them, for carriage of timber from Stablegate to the donjon, where we are, for 2 men that set the kettle, a great cauldron, and parboiled him, to 2 men that carried his quarters to the gate and set them up, for a halter to hang him, for 2 halfpenny halters, for straw, to the woman that scoured the kettle afterwards, and to him that did execution, 4 shillings and 8pence.
Expensive business.
Absolutely. And it took a long time to hang a man, cut him down while still living, to slit open his stomach and bring his entrails out in front of him and then burn them, and finally to hack him into quarters took approximately half an hour. There was plenty of entertainment for the ghouls gathered round the foot of the hill.
Now they've finished the friary, the archaeologists are ready to embark on the next phase of their journey back in time. It'll take them into one of the most vibrant periods in the city's history, when it was full of pilgrims who'd come from across Europe to worship at the shrine of Canterbury's most famous son. What evidence can the archaeologists find of the Becket boom? Join us after the break.
Morning. Morning, everybody.
With the launch just a day away, the porter cabin's still being fitted out. One of the highlights of the display will be a selection of the choicest finds from the site.
A pilgrim bell.
Pilgrim bell, yes.
Yeah. It's quite interesting. We've got so many different combing patterns.
But for display, they need to be dated, and that's thrown up an unexpected problem. On Time Team, we're used to getting instant information on our finds as they come out of the ground, so-called spot dating. But on a dig like this, it's often months or even years before the dating experts get to work.
It's going to be another strain.
So Helen's gone to ask the archaeologists if the process can somehow be accelerated.
What I was wondering was whether we could have a system of spot dating the contexts as they emerge, so that we can just... It doesn't have to be accurate, but we've been here before, haven't we?
Good job, I would say.
You spot date, don't you, as you go along?
It'll give you a rough idea.
Yeah, rough idea is probably good enough.
But we couldn't spot date all the contexts that come out.
No.
I mean, you'd be talking about when we get fully going again, a bit of a long.
I don't know, what sort of number of find strays maybe coming out a day? 30, 40 strays? Could be, couldn't it?
In the end, the archaeologists agree to date some finds, if Big Dig will pay for it. And just in time.
This idea of the squares is a super one, isn't it? I got my ticket, but
Paul's managed to recruit the mayor and a host of the Canterbury Great and Good to help him launch with a bang.
Ladies and gentlemen, we raise our glasses to Canterbury City, its past, its present, and its future. Canterbury City.
The guests all love it. But everyone knows the real test will come tomorrow, when Big Dig opens its doors to the paying public. On site, the archaeologists have embarked on the next phase of the dig. They're now delving into the period between the martyrdom of Thomas Becket in 1170 and the arrival of the Whitefriars 150 years later. This was boom time for Canterbury, and they hope to find evidence of shops and hostels built to cater for the massive influx of pilgrims. But it's likely to be one of the most technically difficult tasks of the whole dig, because the buildings were all made of wood.
You can see a little layer of charcoal, little layer of burnt clay, little layer of charcoal below. We've got further down, you can see more these are almost certainly butting up against timber beam slots. Of course, by now the timber will have rotted. The only evidence we'll have of them are just the little slots where the booms would have been set. And sometimes they're not even set within slots, they just rest on the ground. So you haven't even got any evidence at all. It's quite, one possibility is that we'll just have floor levels, and the only evidence you'll have of where the buildings were is where the floors stop.
This sounds ominous, not least for Big Dig on its opening day. Paul's hoping to attract 80,000 people a year to the visitor centre, and a site with no visible structures is hardly tempting. But on day one, at least, the public don't seem to mind.
About time we did something like this so people come and actually see what's happening.
Yeah. Well, this is brilliant. They've done some really good work here.
All of those. Oh wow! which is the actual takings?
Oh wow!
Which
This
is
one at the
the
bottom,
takings?
the big one.
£747.
Yes.
And we haven't got any stock yet.
No, we haven't.
That's fantastic.
Over the next few weeks, the visitors continue to flood in. And one of the star attractions is Time Team's own Phil Harding. He's dropped by to help out with an archaeological experiment. Phil! What's that whiff?
It's disgusting, isn't it, Tony? But it's exactly the smell you get when you boil up horn. God, doesn't it stink?
The site's produced loads of these cow and sheep horn cores, which are, I'm told, the residue of a form of medieval glass making. I find this a bit unlikely, so expert medieval horn worker Bodger Hodgson is going to show me how it's done, by making a lantern. Lanthorn, is that where the word lantern comes from?
Yeah, that lamp was a kind of cow that gave a horn that was very translucent.
Stage one is to boil the horn until the sheath can be slipped off the core.
Yes, look at that.
There we are.
Then the sheaths are split and boiled until they're soft enough to flatten in the medieval horn press.
And then we squeeze that in there.
If they can get it in.
You're saying this is quite a critical stage.
Yeah, you
got it?
Got it. Right. See, it's fighting me now. It's trying to.
Or that one?
Right, just get that not get it stopped.
A quick cold bath and the horn is still curved.
I think that's off that same horn that we had the problem with the other one.
Is there any... I mean, that's a scrapper, is it?
Yeah, that's had it.
Well, you can't get them right every time, can you?
Just get it right once. Reputations are at stake. But before they can start blaming the tools, they've got to try once more.
That one is dead flat, look.
That is. Ah. Oh, honour is satisfied.
And it's quite a good piece as well.
God, ah.
Now the panes of horn need to be thinned and polished to make them more translucent.
Oh, that makes some difference, doesn't it, eh?
Things seem to have improved rather dramatically, Phil.
Oh, we're nearly there, Tony. It's coming along hot off the press, yeah.
They're beautiful things, aren't they?
They really are.
Each one's got its own quality, like gemstones.
Sheer colour of them, too. They're beautiful. All right.
Ladies and gentlemen, the Time Team Lantern. But there's no cause for applause on sight. Although the archaeologists have found evidence of pre-friary buildings right across the site, the tangle of floors has proved too complex for them to tell in any detail how they were laid out or what they were for. But it's not all bad news, because they've found the remains of 2 roads running off the high street across the site. There's one at the west end of the site, known as the Lost Lane, because it went out of use when the friary cut it off, and there's another further east, called St George's Lane. These roads were clearly being used during the early Middle Ages by the people whose shops and houses have been so difficult to untangle. But what's really exciting the archaeologists is that they were originally built much earlier. In fact, they could lead the team back to the very origins of the modern city.
The Roman street grid isn't retained at all in Canterbury after the Roman period. It goes out of use, and then streets are laid after that. But there's some debate as to whether they're actually laid out properly in the Anglo-Saxon period, like 8th, 9th century, or whether in fact they're early medieval in date, 11th century. And there's very few excavations that have been done that have been able to look at a proper sequence of medieval layers in Canterbury.
Alison thinks that whoever built the 2 roads on our site may also have laid out the high street, and indeed most of the road grid that survives in Canterbury today. The Saxons obviously had roads, but the question is whether the Normans destroyed them and started again.
Yeah.
A number of people have said that. The circumstantial evidence suggests that they did. In the decade after 1066, the cathedral and large chunks of the city were completely rebuilt by the first Norman Archbishop of Canterbury, Lanfranc. So was Lanfranc embellishing already existing Saxon cathedrals, or did he tend to start again?
Oh no, the Saxon cathedral is totally got rid of and a totally new build started. And that's what's happened everywhere. Nowhere is there an Anglo-Saxon cathedral, an Anglo-Saxon abbey surviving, because the Normans got rid of the whole lot and rebuilt the whole lot. And not only are they doing that, they're also building all the new parish churches around the country. You know, 10, 12,000 parish churches being built at that date.
And all the castles as well?
And all the castles as well.
So the whole of England must have been one enormous building site for about 150 years.
Absolutely, yeah.
But it doesn't look as if Lanfranc built our 2 roads. The archaeologists have been hacking sections through them to get to the very bottom layers, where they found loads of pottery.
That's really quite rough, isn't it?
Well, this stuff, again, it's a type of Canterbury sandyware, and it's quite interesting because it looks like this could be late Saxon Canterbury sandyware, probably from the late 9th and covering most of the 10th century in date.
And it confirms that our 2 roads, at least, were originally built by the Saxons. But it's only half the story. The next question is whether the rest of the modern Canterbury street grid is Saxon in origin as well. Unfortunately, it doesn't look like many visitors will be around to hear the answer. Join us after the break. The early flood of visitors to Big Dig has all but dried up, and so have the takings.
It is the worst winter you or anyone in this country can ever remember, and foot and mouth on top. Terrible visitor figures. So our whole Big Dig thrust has been very disappointing.
How far short are you from your projected target?
Oh, I have to say fairly a long way short.
And is that going to be a big financial problem for you?
It is.
I'm coming here to ask you and all of your colleagues to throw your weight behind this, because we have to make this a success for Canterbury.
To help remedy the situation, project manager Helen Evans has arranged a meeting with representatives of Canterbury's business community.
What we're offering is advertising to the people of the businesses of Canterbury on our aerial walkway. We're asking for £500 from each business for this sponsorship to put up their advertising banners so they can say they're behind us. I think
her pitch is greeted politely.
Thank you very much indeed. Thank you for making time.
But no one signed any cheques.
Thanks.
And back at the visitor centre, there's a new problem.
And so you coughed up a fiver?
Yeah.
And you've now come to try and find your square?
Right.
And?
I'm hopefully waiting.
So are most of the 2,000 people who bought sponsored squares. It's 10 weeks since Big Dig opened, and only a handful of them have had finds from their square displayed. And most have received no information at all, including me. I've got my 2 sponsored squares here. Are you going to be able to show me where they are?
I can't, but Peter probably will.
Are you going to be able to show me where my 2 squares are?
Where your personal 2 squares are?
Yeah.
Well, they're out there.
Well, I know that.
No, there is a map, and I know exactly where everybody's is, so if you get a find, I can take
But
your
I won't
find
know if
and
I've
show
got a find. Unless I
Well,
know
I'll
where my
tell
square-
you, and you'll be able to take your find and say, right, this is my find, and it came from this area here.
Where's the map?
Where's the map? In my office.
But at least there's good news from the site.
What we call occupation material. I know it's a very vague...
Right underneath the lost lane, the archaeologists have found this. It may not look much to you and me, but to Alison, it's a Saxon floor, and just the evidence she wanted that the roads are part of a wider town plan.
In Canterbury as elsewhere, we always assumed that the Anglo-Saxon roads have formed by... Initially they'd be trackways, they'd just be running on little muddy tracks, and you'd get little hollows that would form in the ground as people use them and walk up and down all the time. And then they get metalled later, that the routeway has been established and then you metal them. But what we've got here is this clearly was no hollow way. We've got the Saxon road goes straight on top of an occupation layer, and therefore it's almost like it's someone said we will have a road here, bump, and it's just been laid straight on top of whatever was existing.
Yeah. There's an even better example under the cobbles of St George's Lane, where the archaeologists have found a whole house defined by 4 post holes.
Does that rather suggest that, like a motorway, they've just sort of smashed through the settlements?
Yeah, I think so. They've taken whatever in its path, flattened it and put the road in.
I mean, that sounds like something...
Modern.
Well, actually, yes, it does sound modern, but it sounds like something fairly bureaucratic and planning and state organising, doesn't it, rather than a bit of piecemeal development.
In fact, this is the earliest evidence of post-Roman town planning ever found in the city. So would it be fair to say that this moment was the beginning of modern Canterbury?
Well, I think very much so, or at least it's the moment when the city's road grid is more or less fully formed, because the streets you walk along today are nearly all Anglo-Saxon. And this is really significant, so that there are very few streets in the city that aren't 1,000 years old.
The period when Canterbury's road grid was finally laid comes at the end of one of the least understood phases in the city's history. No one really knows for sure what happened in the 600 years between the departure of the Romans and the arrival of the Normans, and it's easy to see why. There's hardly any archaeology. Most of the period is represented by a layer of findless soil called the Dark Earth, and above it, the later Saxon remains are faint and difficult to interpret, as I discovered when Alison showed me the remains of what she claims is a Saxon building. Alison, all I can see is light grey and a few bits of darky grey black. Which bits do you think are houses, and why do you think they're houses?
Well, I think all we can say is that we've got these little patches of clay, burnt clay, little patches of ash spread around, little different patches which disappear. Once you get up here, you get into a much darker soil. So you could say that there's probably a building here, but the only evidence that's left of it are those sort of remnants of floor surfaces inside.
Why don't you get more evidence?
You don't actually need to dig any post holes. You could just lay like big oak 18-inch square timbers and then slot other timbers in and build a timber frame structure on top of that. And it's just sitting on the ground surface. And there must have been a huge amount of building done like that in the past. And it doesn't leave much of a trace except the difference between the inside and outside floor.
In fact, apart from this, the house under the lane, and a few fragments of floor dotted around the site, the archaeologists can't find any Saxon structures at all. But we can tell something about Saxon life here from the finds. This loom weight suggests someone was weaving on the site. A beautiful antler comb suggests someone of status and sophistication lived here. But most intriguing of the lot are these carved bones.
These represent almost the first 2 skates that have ever come out of Canterbury.
Oh, right.
So
this is for getting about on the ice in the winter?
This is for getting about on the ice.
Oh, crikey, this is
very, and you've got
very
a lovely
shiny,
smooth surface there.
Look at that.
Yeah.
Can you see the shine on that? And the same with this one?
Yep,
That's
same thing
rather...
again. They're both made from the same bone.
See how smooth that is, yeah. God, it's like glass, isn't it?
This, in a way, if you like, is your beginner, because this one has a hole at this end, which you would put a peg in, and the peg would secure your straps. So right, that would keep your foot on there quite well.
Yeah.
This one, absolutely nothing like that at all.
No
no hole there, no hole there.
Yeah.
That you hold on simply by standing on it and being a reasonably proficient skater.
Well, sounds hairy.
Meanwhile, Helen's still hunting for corporate cash. This time she's invited 30 local big hitters and their checkbooks to a party in the Big Dig Museum. In the end, only one guest, hopelessly outnumbered by his hosts, has the courage to turn up and deliver the bad news in person.
£500 is not value for money.
You
for
think
me.
not? For you? For you?
Basically, it would just be throwing my money down a hole.
The archaeologists prefer to call it an excavation. And in the absence of significant Saxon structures, they've moved it into the next phase. They've hacked through 300 years of dark earth and are beginning to uncover tantalizing glimpses of the Roman city. But in fact, the archaeologists began their journey into Rome and Canterbury several months ago. Early on in the dig, they opened a second site just over the road from the main area, up against the city walls. There they found, as expected, the Roman ramparts, but they also found something quite unexpected. Where is it?
There it is. Genuine Roman masonry down there. You just see the corner there, that's it sticking out underneath the wheelbarrow.
These are the foundations for a huge defensive tower built into the walls. It's a very important discovery. It's the first of its kind ever found in Canterbury. And it's getting the archaeological red carpet. So are you going to whip this up?
No, this is going to be preserved. It actually forms a part of the Scheduled Ancient Monument, so it's protected by law. You're not allowed to dig it up. And it was quite a surprise that we actually found this tower here. We'd never had an inkling. We've only found this one other one in Canterbury, and we didn't expect to find one in this site. We knew that the wall, if it existed, would have to be protected, but we didn't expect a tower.
The archaeologists think there may have been 10 or more of these towers strategically placed along the walls. Each one was capable of accommodating troops and heavy defensive artillery. The inhabitants of Canterbury were clearly taking no chances. But against what? The conventional answer is Saxon raiders from northern Europe. But Paul is unconvinced.
people have said it's raids on the coast, and that the villa economies are all at threat. But it is the case that of all the villas that have been excavated in this part of the world, we have not one example of a villa that's been destroyed by fire and sword.
He thinks there could also have been a more immediate threat from within. And in the rampart soils, the archaeologists may have found its author.
That is one of the most interesting people of all Roman Britain's history.
Yeah.
He was Carausius.
Oh, yes,
he was a
I've heard.
rebel Roman emperor.
Yeah.
He set himself up in Britain, and the relevance here to Canterbury is that he was commander of the British fleet in the English Channel. He's actually set up to protect Britain from Saxon raiders, and we've got the forts built all round Canterbury. We've got Canterbury building the city walls.
This is Richborough, Reculver and all
Exactly.
those.
Now, no one knows exactly whether he was responsible for building the forts or carrying on building them, or whether he took advantage of them, but he's a central and incredibly important figure to this whole disturbed period, and this is his stamping ground.
Is that reckoned to be a likeness of him? Because he does look as if he's got a sort of crinkly beard.
He's
and
a tremendous-looking chap, and I'm absolutely sure his personality's there. He gets murdered by his sidekick and associate, a man called Electus, in the year 293, right? Electus himself then gets defeated by the official Roman emperor. They wipe the whole regime out, they crush it. Carausius and his restored Roman Empire, because he sold himself as the reviving the whole of the Roman Empire and bringing out a tremendous propaganda campaign. That's the end of it.
Whether the walls were built to defend against the Saxons or as part of Carausius' treachery, we'll never know. But one thing's certain. This was a time of tremendous upheaval for the citizens of Roman Canterbury, more evidence of which is beginning to emerge from the site. This is a Roman burial urn. It's not a surprising find in itself, but it is in a surprising place.
But hang on, we're actually inside the Roman city walls. The law, the Roman law, is that you're not supposed to bury inside an inhabited area.
Yep.
So how do you explain that?
Well, that's fine, because the city wall is 3rd century.
Right.
That still gives us plenty of time before the construction of the wall. So that's not a problem.
So you might be talking about a small Roman Canterbury in the 1st and 2nd centuries, outside which there can be burials, and then later on the town expands and they put the walls up, and that would enclose older cemeteries buried beneath later buildings.
Yeah, there's definite evidence of expansion out.
Yeah.
Not only that, but our site lies right in the middle of the expansion zone, between the old city limits and the new defences, which is a great position to record the change from the quiet affluence of the 2nd century to the political turmoil of the 3rd. But there's a problem. Over the spring, a number of the more experienced archaeologists have left the dig. They simply can't afford to live in Canterbury on an archaeologist's wage.
I think that they're probably on about 215, 220, something like that, as a sort of experienced excavator. And a lot of them would probably be financially better off elsewhere. Canterbury is just such an expensive place to live.
Mark and Alison need to recruit at least 10 experienced new diggers if they're to stand a chance of getting to the bottom of the site. They've placed an ad in the papers, but it's not a success.
Staffing levels then, how are the staffing levels coming on?
We had an advert out 2 weeks ago, which wasn't very successful. We've managed to recruit 3 new people, and there's a 4th arriving in a couple of weeks.
How short are you then?
We also have an advert at the job centre, which is going to fill other positions.
Yeah.
We could take another 8.
Well, you're that short? We're that short in terms of the digging team? Why are we not getting the response? What's your view?
A wages and time.
Right. Well, that's quite serious.
These diggers get no less basic pay here than they would elsewhere, but they get no accommodation allowance, and Canterbury is an expensive place to live, which is why for 20 of them, this grotty, disused hotel is home.
It's practically closed down. They're waiting for planning permission to turn it into flats, but because we were so desperate for somewhere to live, they said yes, we could have it.
The sitting room's dingy enough, but it's much worse downstairs.
Well, the oven doesn't work.
Yeah.
It is fairly
doesn't it? Yeah, so that's the only sink we had.
This was the sink when they moved in, for the 20 of you. What's the rent?
50 a week.
50 a week.
One of the new recruits couldn't even afford that much and has had to make other arrangements. Why did you decide to live in a tent?
It wasn't a decision, it was a matter of necessity, really. But I've got a house the other side of the country, it's a short-term contract, it's a job, basically, you know.
You couldn't just get cheap digs here?
Not cheap enough.
Paul, meanwhile, has got accommodation problems of his own.
So here's my nightmare. This is Dave, who's helping repair the house, and with it my marriage, which is under some strain at the moment. No, it was brilliant. It all happened more or less simultaneously. You know, one leak, then the valley gutter going, then the central heating packing up, half the sockets packing up, then the front dropping off the cooker. I mean, amazing.
Why did you allow the house to get into this state, Paul?
I'm embarrassed to say I just did nothing. I just sort of worked and slept here and just let it go. When your job is your hobby, and when you can't let go, as I can't let go, when I want a job doing, I usually try and do it myself. And it's very difficult to delegate, which is sort of a bad character flaw. But simply, yes, in terms of obsession, yes, I am obsessional, it's true.
So it's not surprising Paul's reaction to the staffing crisis is to get stuck in himself. The remaining archaeologists are all working overtime as well. And an army of volunteers has been mobilised to help out at weekends. The site's soon buzzing with activity. And the effort seems to be paying off. Join us after the break. With only 4 weeks to go, the archaeologists have just found their first Roman house on the site, and it was posh. 2,000 years ago, this mosaic floor would have been the height of Romano-British chic.
It's almost as if medieval or 18th century people thought, let's find the best bit of the mosaic and slam a hole straight through it, because I rather suspect that you're absolutely right. This is like the edge round, almost the equivalent of a living room carpet. These are the bare floorboards round the edge. And over here, this is where the expensive design would be, because you've got this increase in colours. So I'd imagine we might have had a nice room floor, do you think, stretching over in that direction?
I think that's the implication, yes.
But if we pan back over here, just look down over to that, and there's all those dark red tesserae, which are much bigger. I think that's the sort of thing you normally get in a corridor coming around here and into a largest room in the house with an expensive floor.
Yeah.
Although this is clearly a high-status dwelling, only a fraction of the original ground plan remains, so it's hard to tell just how big or luxurious it was. But we can tell when it was built.
And what's actually interesting here, if you look down here, Nick, at first glance it almost looks like the tesserae, but that's actually a piece of Gaulish Samian-ware.
Yeah.
Now, the thing about Samian is, broadly speaking, it belongs to the 1st and 2nd centuries AD.
Yeah. Didn't the factories go out of use in 250 or something?
Well,
like
it dwindles very steadily from the late 2nd century into the early 3rd century.
Right,
now,
right.
That doesn't mean it isn't used afterwards, because you might have an old pot sitting around like a Victorian tea plate.
Sat on the cupboard, like.
But you know, generally speaking, it is going to get broken and thrown away, and that is right underneath. It looks as if it's securely stratified underneath our floor level.
Underneath the plaster or concrete in which that's set.
So what that means is the floor can't really have been installed before the middle of the 2nd century, and it's probably later. And if you allow for that pot sitting around, being buried and stuff happening on top of it, that does push our floor into the 3rd century.
But that was still before the walls, which went up in the second half of the century. And it means this must have been a suburban house nestling on the very edge of the city limits, a symbol of the relaxed affluence soon to be shattered. But next door to it, the archaeologists are uncovering the remains of a house with a very different history, as is evident from its mosaic floor.
This is a terribly crude floor, and it looks as if it's been chopped up out of roof tile.
That's right, yes.
Because there's the edge of one.
Yeah.
Have you found any roof tile on the site? 'Cause it seems as if someone's been chopping up something derelict.
Indeed. In fact, just around the corner here we have evidence of an earlier phase of activity underneath, and inside you can see the broken roof tiles.
Now that's part of the same floor, isn't it, running on from over there?
Yeah.
Well, we've got an earlier feature here. There's an edge of a roof tile, a tegular, whatever it is.
There's not much of this building left either, but there's no sign of the wealth of its neighbour. In fact, it looks as if it was thrown together in a hurry, and its stone construction suggests it was built later, perhaps even during the period of threat.
Because it may be, for example, that the city wall is being built at the same time that people are moving into the city, perhaps for extra protection.
Yeah.
So perhaps this is the house, for example, of someone who did live out in the countryside. There's the threat of the Saxon pirates, and maybe that's the spur which has drawn this person to build within the new city walls.
Yeah.
So this is the snapshot of change the archaeologists were looking for. Whatever the threat, and however real the danger, for the citizens of Canterbury, it meant the transition from this in the late 2nd century to this in the late 3rd. Demolition crews are already at work on the next sites. A reminder, if anyone needed, that time has almost run out. The archaeologists have got just 2 weeks to finish phase 1. To hit the deadline, they've had to make some tough decisions. Although they knew all along they wouldn't have time to excavate the whole site thoroughly, they're having to leave rather more Saxon and Roman archaeology unrecorded than they wanted. Now they're focused on just 2 or 3 key areas. In particular, another Roman building that's emerged in the middle of the site. But this one's clearly not a house.
Well, the interesting thing here is that when we've looked up close at these layers, in fact, you can see it quite clearly, they're just full of grain. Can you see all the grain impressions in there?
Yeah.
And these layers are just all stuffed with charred grain.
Now, does that mean they've burnt grain, or is it like a burnt warehouse of grain, or is it to do with drying grain? With heaters and
good series of very good questions. Yeah.
They're I mean, in the processing, you often get a certain amount of burnt stuff. If you burn the chap off or whatever, so
I definitely don't think it's accidental. These layers are just full of burnt grain.
All very intriguing, and not just for the archaeologists. There's been a last-minute surge in visitors. But the damage has been done. Paul had hoped to attract 80,000 people to the visitor centre this year. In the first 6 months, he's had just 16,000. And far from raising money, the big dig's struggling to break even.
I haven't got enough local people and visitors to the city to come and see the process in action. And that means that a future visitor attraction is really at threat, I think is the right way to put it. I don't know if we can continue running it beyond the end of this excavation.
The final decision will be made in 1 week. In the meantime, every visitor and every penny counts. Helen's now reduced to cold calling.
I was phoning just to pursue our interest in sponsorship. Phone after 2 o'clock. OK, thank you very much indeed. Cheers. Bye-bye. Oh, next year. Right, yeah. So we need to work on the directors.
Meanwhile, the exploration of the mysterious Roman building with the burnt grain has taken a surprising turn. Because it's not Roman at all.
Well, we got Saxon pot off the top, but we've also had Saxon pottery right through the layers now, so it's definitely a Saxon structure, which is very interesting for numerous reasons. The main one being that its size. I mean, Saxon grain, features like this associated with grain storage are very unusual in the Saxon period of this size.
Better still, they've identified the burnt grain as wheat, which means they now know this was a granary. and they've established a direct link between it and one of the Saxon roads. They've found fragments of a cobbled spur leading from St George's Lane directly to a courtyard outside the building.
Maybe the little spur that's coming off from the St George's Lane end was deliberately added just to get down to the granary. Perhaps it started to get, you know, fairly nasty, sort of taking their carts up and down there, and they've actually deliberately put a road down.
This is a real turn-up for the books. It's the first Saxon industrial structure to be found in Canterbury, and probably the first and largest Saxon granary found in Kent. It's beginning to look as if the archaeologists might be able to put some Saxon flesh on the bones of the roads after all. Can they wrench anything else from the site in the final week? It's the day of reckoning for Big Dig. It's broken even, and Paul wants to continue on to the next site. But first, he's got to convince his committee.
I think the other thing, Charles, is that we've spent a great deal of time getting this identity and then servicing the identity. So there's been quite a lot of investment in terms of not only getting things in display cases.
Definitely going to need additional funding, there's no doubt about it. And I think the point I really wanted to make is, I'm afraid, Helen, between now and the end of June when you move, you've got to be really targeting all those businesses and saying, without your help, we're actually not going to be able to do this.
All those in favour? Okay.
If we can just review it, I think it's got to be reviewed almost 3 weekly in terms of your debts.
So Big Dig lives to fight another day, but only just. And as preparations are made for the move to the next site, poor old Helen is straight back on the phone. So Helen, would you do it again?
No. No. I would happily advise anyone who is doing it about the pitfalls, and I'd help as much as I could, but I wouldn't do it myself because it's taken over my life really, and I need to do a few other things.
It's the final day of the dig, and Helen Holderness is hacking like a maniac. She spent the last few weeks trying to untangle a complex sequence of Saxon archaeology under St George's Lane. She's already uncovered a Saxon house with 4 post holes and a clay floor.
It is there.
And now, right next door, she's found some fragments of a stone structure.
It's a very hard mortared floor layer, very compacted, with layers of clay and occupation levels below it. And then this could be a post pad, and we think that this thing here could be part of the wall or another post pad.
Helen, what do you think we've got here?
Gut feeling is substantial structure. To be stone built and Saxon makes it special. There it is.
The problem is, she's only got a few hours left to find out how special.
It's just one tile. Up.
Dig quicker!
Nice thing.
I'm just wondering where Nat's
Well, it's not there.
And do we know the extent of it that way now? Because you'll add on that extra tile.
And with every strike of the mattock, the building expands.
Oh, man. That's a different stone altogether.
Then with just 20 minutes to go, the final find of the whole dig causes confusion.
It's a very Roman stone, as you say. And local as well. Yeah, local built.
In the end, the archaeologists decide this is a Middle Saxon building from about the 8th century. It's probably the earliest post-Roman building on site, which is a little strange because Canterbury's famous for being full of much earlier Saxon houses, but evidently not here.
You've done a fantastic job. It's been a pleasure to work with such a dedicated, professional and extremely hard-working team. We'll be putting 200 quid behind the bar tomorrow night, so enjoy yourselves. So phase 1 of the dig has finally drawn to a close.
But not before the archaeologists were able to piece together the history of the site during its most obscure period. The story begins in the 5th century when the Saxons invaded. They allowed most of the city to decay. And unusually for Canterbury, there's no evidence of human activity on the site for the next 300 years. But the Saxons did gradually begin to colonise the area. First one, then clusters of buildings sprang up in piecemeal fashion during the 8th century. But it wasn't until the 9th century that Canterbury really took off again. Then the planners took hold and demolished everything here to make way for a road grid fronted by new houses surrounding a huge new granary. This, 1100 years ago, was the beginning of modern Canterbury. There's still plenty of archaeology down here, but time's run out. And on Monday, the builders turn up with their bulldozers and dumper trucks. But in the middle of all that destruction, there'll be a really heartening continuity. This time next week, the medieval friary, the buzzing Saxon streets, the posh Roman houses with their mosaic floors, will all have given way to concrete, the basement of a new department store. The next chapter in the story of Canterbury's commercial history.
Next week, tune in for another special, The London Dig, at the same time, 9 o'clock. The Channel 4 book, Digging the Dirt with Time Team, by Tim Taylor, priced at £18.99, is now available in shops or by calling 0870 1234 344. Next on Channel 4, everything you've ever wanted to know about lesbian sex, answered in The Truth About Lesbian Sex.